Hey everybody, welcome back to the Divine's Finest podcast. And today in episode 46, we're going to talk about why LOA does not heal trauma and that it actually hides it. Okay, and this is something else that I wish I would have known a long time ago as well too, when I was in the LOA community, the Law of Assumption community, if you already don't know, and that it actually does not heal trauma. It hides it, you guys, okay? So if you've been, using LOA to manifest love or to get an ex back, if you've been repeating affirmations, persisting, scripting, and yet you still notice that you're anxious or even heartbroken underneath, this episode is definitely something worth listening to, okay? So this is the first conversation, not the very first one, but one of the many conversations I wish someone had with me before I spent about 3 or 4 years bypassing my own wounds in the name of manifesting. So grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your journal, because we are going to go deep. And before I get started, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel, and make sure you check out my free Secure Self Era journal. All right. If you're in a situationship, or if you're dealing with someone with hot and cold behavior, that sort of thing, that journal is definitely going to help you out. It has 7 days worth of prompts in there. All right. You can download that for free. And also, if you want to dig deeper, I have my paid Decentering Men journal as well. All right. The links are in the description box below this video. Okay. So real quick, I want to start with my own story. All right, because maybe you'll see yourself in it. So when I first found LOA, I would say at the very end of 2020, going into 2021, I want to say, I was still at that stage of where I really wanted to manifest Taz. And I've told you guys plenty of stories, if you haven't been listening, about Taz and how I actually used to identify him as my twin flame for quite some time. Okay. And then of course I went from basically the twin flame community to right into the LOA community, basically. Okay. And, I realized that after some time, I had realized that I had an anxious attachment style. And I was terrified of abandonment, right? I used to have so many visuals, like nightly visuals of like seeing myself being left, especially from him, and things like that, right? And of course, now it pretty much has disappeared, because that's what happens when you heal, right? And I felt like, if I could just manifest this right, that I'd finally feel chosen and safe. Right. And see, the thing about, LOA is it promises you control, so if you think it, feel it, persist, that they'll come. I devoured courses, several of them. Okay, you guys, YouTube videos and success stories, such as in the Facebook groups, this, that, and the third. Right. And at first, it felt magical. Like I had little wins. For example, I've showed them on my reels. If you guys haven't seen them, and I used to even post success stories of myself. Like, I remember when I got a text out of the blue from Taz, like a few years back, and it was between Christmas time and New Year's, and I was doing a self-concept, I remember I was doing like a self-concept challenge, right? And he had texted me out of blue, and he's not really known to text me like that, because usually I was the one, that would reach out to him, for example, right? I've definitely had manifested in money, or just somebody, or like, I remember when Sri had messaged me out of the blue because I had written it down from a no contact challenge I did as well too, and he was just living proof of resurfacing, right? And I felt like the whole situation was real. Like I really did believe in manifesting, okay? Just to give a couple of examples. But underneath, the thing about it is that underneath, you guys, is that nothing really changed permanently. Okay? There's a difference. There's a difference between just getting temporary changes and permanent changes. Okay? And I was only getting temporary changes. And see, my nervous system was still dysregulated at the time. I was still chasing crumbs. I still couldn't rest in love, Every time something didn't manifest, I thought that there was something wrong with me, or like my self-concept was broken, or there were some subconscious beliefs I wasn't even aware of, that I needed to figure out, or something like that, or that I was doing something wrong, or I was, just a whole bunch of different things, right? And that shame, it was heavy, okay? And that's when I realized that LOA was not healing me. It was actually covering my wounds with glitter and calling it alignment. And LOA is seductive, okay? Because it promises certainty to people who feel powerless. So if you grew up with emotional inconsistency or have an anxious attachment style like I used to, okay, that promise of control, of just persist and you'll get them back, feels like safety, right? But control isn't safety, it's survival mode. And survival mode keeps your nervous system stuck in fight or flight. And here's the catch, you guys, is LOA often teaches you to ignore your triggers and suppress fear by saying, don't look at the 3D, right? Or ignore the 3D, or fuck the 3D, okay? It could be one of those phrases, all right? And that's not healing. That's actually avoidance. And trauma thrives in avoidance. Real trauma healing isn't about mind control. It's about nervous system repair. You can't out-affirm a body that feels unsafe. If your abandonment wound is activated, your brain floods with cortisol, your heart races, you spiral, telling yourself, I am loved, and that state doesn't create safety. It often feels like lying. So safety comes from things like, such as co-regulation with safe people, breath work, grounding exercises, somatic practices, which are these things I actually teach you how to do step by step in my Decentering Men journal, for example, okay? Boundaries that prove to your body that you won't abandon yourself. Processing grief, anger, and hurt instead of skipping it. And LOA skips that and says, feel it real, persist. But you're persisting over an unhealed wound is what you're doing. So the other thing about LOA is that it can actually unintentionally gaslight people with trauma. So, for example, like if you didn't manifest your SP, your specific person, for people who don't know what that means, right? Stands for. It must be your negative thoughts. Or maybe if you're feeling anxious, you would be considered as being out of alignment. If your relationship is toxic, you would ignore the 3D and, it would just be like, oh, it's just the old story playing out, is what they would say, right? And this keeps people blaming themselves for very real nervous system responses, and sometimes even staying in harmful dynamics because they think leaving means giving up on the manifestation. And, you guys, and here's the thing, like even beyond LOA, like I stayed in connections that were hurting me because I believed that my job was to persist harder, right? Basically to keep going. And that wasn't self-love. It was actually self-abandonment disguised as faith. So here's what actually shifted everything for me, okay? Which is nervous system work, or AKA nervous system regulation work. So, which is, learning to calm your anxiety and building safety in my body. And one of my favorite mantras, which is right in my Disentering Men journal that I teach you guys to do, which is, he's no longer here. I'm with me now, and I place my hand over my heart and take a breath. Okay. Setting boundaries, which is another thing I actually started to do personally. Okay. And I actually do have a mini guide on that, which is a $7 add-on. That you guys can get as well too, on top of the journal, because and that helped me no longer chase or tolerate inconsistency from people. Okay. Inner child healing, seeing why I was magnetized to the avoidant partners. Feminine embodiment and womb rituals was another thing, which is where I reconnected with my own worth. And truth over bypassing, admitting when something felt unsafe instead of affirming it away. And here's the thing, is that once I stopped bypassing and started actually healing, my fear of abandonment actually disappeared. And I actually did do another recent episode about that as well too. I think it was episode 43. I think it was just recently, you guys. So check that out, okay? And love became calm and not chaotic. I didn't have to manifest scraps anymore, or breadcrumbs, I want to say. I became a match for real love by becoming safe for myself first. And before I wrap up, you guys, I just wanted to say that if LOA has left you burned out, which is what happened to me, right? Anxious and ashamed, it's not because you're broken, okay? And I said this in the last episode too. It's because it was never designed to heal trauma. It was designed to teach mind control, not nervous system repair. And you're allowed to stop chasing the next course or affirmation or scripting technique, whatever you want to, call it, and start building real safety. Because you're allowed to want love that doesn't require mental gymnastics, literally. Okay, you guys. So with that being said, if this resonates, which I hope that it does for some of you out there, I want you to check out my free 7-day secure self journal, like I mentioned, and my 28-day Decentering Men journal as well, because they are created for women or even men out there like us who are done with crumbs and ready for secure love. And those links are in the description box below if you want to check them out. And remember that healing is not about controlling someone else's free will. It's about reclaiming yours. So with that being said, that's what I have for you guys today. Check out those links in the description box. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you guys in the next podcast episode.